Vincent van Gogh, a name that today stands for brilliance and tragedy in equal measure, was not born a legend. He was born a quiet, lonely child in a small Dutch village, and his road to immortality was paved with rejection, poverty, and unimaginable pain. Vincent Willem van Gogh came into the world on March 30th, 1853, in Zundert, a small town in the south of the Netherlands. He was the son of a Protestant pastor, Theodorus van Gogh and Anna Cornelia Carbentus, but even his birth carried a strange shadow. Exactly 1 year earlier, his parents had lost a child, also named Vincent. Every Sunday, on their way to church, they passed a small grave bearing that name. It's hard not to imagine how that shaped the boy who came after, growing up with the sense that he was, in a way, a replacement for someone who never lived. From a young age, Vincent was introspective, emotional, and restless. He spent hours wandering through fields and sketching the world around him. The Dutch countryside, its gray skies, humble farms, and tired workers would leave a lasting mark on his imagination. He loved nature, books, and solitude, but he struggled to connect with people. Teachers described him as intelligent but moody. Friends, when he had them, often found him too intense. At 16, Vincent took a job at Goupil and Cie, an art dealership in The Hague where his uncle worked. It should have been the perfect fit. He was surrounded by paintings, exposed to the art world for the first time. But Vincent was never comfortable with the idea of art as business. He hated the way paintings were bought and sold like products. He moved from The Hague to London and later to Paris, working in the same firm, but his mood darkened. He fell in love with a woman who didn't love him back, and when she rejected him, something inside him began to break. His letters from that time already show signs of the instability that would haunt him for the rest of his life, a man torn between deep compassion and uncontrollable emotion. By his mid-20s, he had given up the art trade entirely. He drifted from job to job, a teacher, a bookseller, and finally a preacher. He wanted desperately to find meaning, something bigger than himself. In 1879, he volunteered to work as a lay preacher among poor coal miners in Belgium's Bornage region. What he saw there changed him forever. The miners lived in brutal conditions, hungry, exhausted, covered in soot from head to toe. Vincent felt their suffering so deeply that he began to give away all his possessions, sleeping on the ground beside them, sharing their food, their poverty, their pain. The church didn't see holiness in this. They saw madness. He was dismissed, told he was too extreme, too emotional, too intense, and so, once again, he was left with nothing. But this time, that emptiness became the beginning of something else. He started to draw again, at first as a way to cope, then with growing passion. He filled sketchbooks with the faces of the poor, the weary, the forgotten. He wrote to his brother Theo that he wanted to make art for those who have no voice. Slowly, through practice and obsession, his lines began to come alive. In his late 20s, he made the decision that would define his life, to dedicate himself completely to art. He studied anatomy, perspective, and color theory on his own. He copied prints, drew farm workers, painted simple still lifes. His early works were dark, painted in browns and blacks, heavy, somber, honest. They reflected not beauty, but struggle. In 1885, he completed The Potato Eaters, a grim portrayal of a peasant family gathered around a dimly lit table, eating from a single pot. Their hands are rough, their faces tired, the air thick with smoke. Vincent wanted to show real life, not elegance or comfort, but truth. I wanted to show, he wrote, that these people, eating their potatoes by the light of their small lamp, have worked the earth themselves. The critics hated it. They said the proportions were wrong, the colors ugly, the figures crude. But Vincent didn't care. For the first time, he was painting from instinct, not from imitation. His art was beginning to carry his own fingerprint, a pulse that no one could ignore. Still, he remained poor, isolated, and uncertain. He lived in small rented rooms, sometimes skipping meals to afford paint. His mental health was fragile, his temper unpredictable. His only constant was Theo, the brother who believed in him when no one else did. Their letters, filled with confessions, dreams, and despair, would one day become as famous as his paintings. By 1886, Vincent's hunger for color and light pushed him to move again, this time to Paris, where Theo worked as an art dealer. There, surrounded by the new wave of Impressionist painters, he would finally discover the vivid colors and expressive energy that defined his greatest works, and begin the turbulent chapter that would bring both his masterpieces and his downfall. When Vincent van Gogh arrived in Paris in 1886, everything changed. The city was alive with color, noise, and ideas. For the first time in his life, he wasn't surrounded by silence and farmland. He was in the center of the modern art world. Paris was where painters were breaking every rule, inventing new ways to see the world. Theo introduced him to the artists who were reshaping painting itself: Pissarro, Seurat, Degas, Toulouse-Lautrec, and Paul Gauguin. Their works were unlike anything Vincent had seen before, bright, spontaneous, filled with light. They painted movement, atmosphere, emotion. For a man who had spent years painting in heavy browns and grays, it was like opening a window to another universe. He studied their techniques obsessively. He experimented with color and brushwork, abandoning the dark tones of his Dutch years. His canvases began to explode with color, vivid blues, yellows, and greens. His brushstrokes became shorter, faster, more alive. For the first time, he felt that painting could express more than appearance. It could express the soul. But life in Paris was also overwhelming. The city never slept. The parties, the drinking, the constant noise, all of it drained him. He lived in small, crowded apartments, rarely ate properly, and often drank too much absinthe to quiet his mind. His relationships with other artists were complicated. Some admired his intensity, others found it unsettling. Vincent wanted peace, sunlight, and space to think. He dreamed of a place where he could paint freely, away from the chaos of the city. In early 1888, he left Paris and took a train to Arles, a small town in the south of France. The journey marked the beginning of the most productive and most unstable period of his life. Arles was everything he had hoped for: golden fields, blue skies, and light that changed with every passing hour. He rented a small yellow house at 2 Place Lamartine and turned it into both his home and studio. The walls were covered in sketches, and the floors were scattered with paint-stained rags and unfinished canvases. He worked obsessively, often painting 3 or 4 pieces a day. During that time, he created some of his most iconic works: the sunflowers, the yellow house, the Café Terrace at night, and the bedroom in Arles. Each painting was filled with intensity and movement, as though he was trying to capture the feeling of being alive rather than the image itself. He imagined Arles as a kind of artistic haven, the studio of the South, he called it, a community where artists could live and work together. His hope was that Paul Gauguin, whom he deeply admired, would join him. After months of persuasion and letters, Gauguin finally agreed. At first, their collaboration was inspiring. They painted side by side, discussed art for hours, and challenged each other's ideas. But it didn't take long for tension to build. Gauguin was disciplined and structured. Van Gogh was impulsive and emotional. Their arguments grew louder, more personal. Vincent, who feared abandonment above all else, became increasingly anxious that Gauguin would leave. By December 1888, the situation reached a breaking point. One night, after a violent argument, Gauguin walked out into the streets of Arles. Vincent followed him, trembling, disoriented, and in despair. No one knows exactly what happened next, but later that night, Van Gogh returned to his room, took a razor, and cut off part of his left ear. He wrapped the ear in paper and, in a moment of confusion or guilt, delivered it to a woman he knew at a nearby brothel. The next morning, he was found unconscious, covered in blood. He was taken to the hospital, where he remained for several days, suffering from hallucinations and fits of panic. When Gauguin came to see him, Vincent was quiet, detached. Gauguin left Arles shortly after and never returned. The townspeople began to fear Vincent. Rumors spread that he was dangerous. Children followed him, mocking him in the streets. His neighbors signed a petition to have him removed from the town. Still, he painted. Even in his lowest moments, he refused to stop working. He wrote to Theo, "I am unable to describe exactly what is the matter with me, but for all that, I am still quite certain that I am not a man without some reason." In the months that followed, his mental state grew worse. He experienced severe anxiety, confusion, and breakdowns that left him unable to function for days. Finally, in May 1889, exhausted and frightened of himself, he made the decision to voluntarily admit himself to a psychiatric asylum. It was there, within the walls of confinement, that he would paint the most famous night sky in history. After the breakdown in Arles, Vincent van Gogh admitted himself to the Saint-Paul-de-Moselle Asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in May 1889. The facility was intended to treat mental illness, providing both structure and supervision. For Vincent, it became a place where he could continue working even as his mind remained fragile. The surrounding landscapes, olive trees, cypress-lined hills, and lavender fields offered him subjects for new paintings, while the routine of the asylum provided a measure of stability. During his year at Saint-Rémy, Van Gogh painted more than 150 works. Some were detailed studies of nature, while others were deeply personal, including multiple self-portraits that reflected his physical and mental state. He also painted interiors and corridors of the asylum itself, capturing the monotony, the confinement, and the occasional moments of tranquility. Among these works is the Starry Night, created from his room looking out over the village and swirling night sky. It is considered one of the most significant and influential paintings in history, representing both his technical skill and his emotional intensity. Even while institutionalized, Van Gogh's letters to his brother Theo reveal a clear, analytical mind. He described his techniques, the effects of color, and his ongoing artistic experiments. He wrote candidly about his mental struggles, including hallucinations, fits of depression, and episodes of exhaustion. Despite these challenges, he remained committed to his work, often stating that painting was the only way to maintain focus and purpose in his life. In May 1890, Van Gogh left Saint-Rémy and moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, a small town near Paris, under the care of Dr. Paul Gachet. During the short period he lived there, approximately 70 days, he produced over 70 paintings, including depictions of wheat fields, cottages, and portraits. His work continued to evolve, showing a combination of energy, precision, and emotional depth. Art historians often consider this final period one of the most remarkable in his career. Despite his productivity, Van Gogh's personal struggles persisted. He felt burdened by financial concerns, his dependence on Theo, and his own insecurities as an artist. On July 27, 1890, he shot himself in a wheat field near Auvers. He was discovered and taken back to the inn where he was staying, but he succumbed to his injuries 2 days later at the age of 37. Theo was at his side, and Vincent's final letters reflect both resignation and concern for his brother's welfare. Vincent van Gogh's life was full of struggle and loneliness, but his art continues to inspire millions. A man unrecognized in his time, whose vision forever changed the way we see the world.